So, plurality, right? Sometimes we feel it's synonymous with what the
Oh, yeah, and then there's two more what the fucks looking at the what the fuck going, huh, what the fuck? And then someone else is like, well, yeah, I never thought about it like that before, but, that is very confusing. Huh. It's just like in the layers of confusion on each other. Happy time zone, everybody.
Welcome back to Housemates for Life podcast. This is, well, we are a bit very blurry today, but we are the voices of Jarvis.
And we are the Unfiltered Universe.
And we will talk today about uncertainty. Not sure yet what we're actually going to talk about, but it's all in the spirit of being not sure about things, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Oh, and the beautiful.
Oh, absolutely, the beautiful.
Right? that was a thing at some point in our podcast.
Oh, yeah. We find a lot of the things that we've been talking about in preparation for this episode really hopeful. So, it's a lot of focus on how uncomfortable uncertainty can be, but also how large the space is for possibility and possibility existing, and how much hope can live in that space. We found really, really good in these discussions.
Absolutely.
Oh, I just wanted to bring up the term cognitive dissonance, because that's part of where we were talking about the uncertainty living, and the fact that things, let's see, we're having trouble putting this into words now. Just how being plural gives us many points of view, which leads to confusion among us, because those points of view are obviously not going to be the same. And it leads to uncertainty because of that.
And we will dive a little bit deeper into that later in this episode. But for now, thank you, audience, for switching into our podcast today. And yeah, thank you for your continuous support. Leave a like, subscribe if you haven't yet.
Oh, absolutely.
And I guess we can sort of start for real now. So yeah, we tried to prepare a little bit for this episode, and we sort of identified three layers that we experience uncertainty in. Probably there are more layers and sub layers and meta layers and whatsoever.
Oh, yeah.
But we tried to focus on three different layers where uncertainty plays a role, can affect our lives personally or also on a larger scale. So starting basically on the larger scale, which doesn't necessarily mean it's the most important, but thinking about a more general scope, kind of a society level, basically the outside world on a larger scale. Then the second level would be on a more personal level, but still like kind of grounded still in the outside external life or like everyday life, on a very individual level, but
not necessarily a plural one.
Yeah, not necessarily have to do with plurality, but something that just everybody, I guess, experiences in their everyday lives, like struggles and experiences. And then we will dive a little bit deeper into the more, let's say, plural specific level, what you were talking about just before, things that are not necessarily exclusive for plural, but very common for plural people, like things like identity confusion, feeling blurry or dissociated, experiencing the cognitive dissonance between system members, etc., etc.
And we will have so much to say about how we discovered how much what is that called? Passive influence and cognitive dissonance are absolutely related. It's interesting to really discover a way to talk about it, an articulation for some of that in this process. So I'm excited, especially, of course, to the end. But let's start general.
Yeah, just to give your audience a little bit of an idea where this episode is going, but there's no guarantee that we follow the thread that we have been laying out for ourselves. Because, well, if you've been listening for a while to the podcast, we can easily get onto a tangent.
Oh, yeah. We do not script these. These are plural conversations. So we have prepared conversations, but you never know what's going to come up, because I don't know about anybody else's system, but ours is learning all the time and very excited to learn and very excited to grow. So we use these conversations as an opportunity to do more of that. So
yeah, and share that experience with the world. Speaking of which, that's the first the first yeah. layer we want to talk about, the world outside. And I'm not sure where to start, actually, but the one thing that is popping up in our head and why we actually brought this up initially is we feel like uncertainty plays a very, 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 very important role on a society level, like for many, many reasons. I'm just thinking about, we don't want to make this political or anything, but the state of the world, the state of society, etc. Especially in these days, talking about summer 2025. Right. I'm not sure when this episode is actually being uploaded.
It's a time of great change.
Yeah. But also, like, not just like these days, but like in more general, I feel like what I experience or observe in people often is like, we are basically taught from a very young age that not knowing the answer to a question you can be punished for. Like, talking about education system, at least in the part of the world where we grew up, in Europe, and I think in North America it's very similar.
Oh yeah, it was very similar when we were in school, that there was a definite pressure to know the right answer. You were not rewarded for curiosity, but you were punished for mistakes. Leads to a lot of anxiety around uncertainty, for sure. Like, if you don't have it figured out when you jump, then it's your fault if you get it wrong, if you get hurt, all that kind of stuff, which is like horrible environment for learning.
Yeah. And like, so we've been in academia for a long time, and like even like it just follows you into adulthood. It's like I've experienced it so many times, people being living with extreme anxiety around being like knowledgeable or like messing up, not knowing the right answer to questions, all these kind of things, like, because it's so drilled into us from a young age. I mean, on one hand, it's a natural fear, I guess, like the fear of darkness, for example, not knowing what's 3 meters ahead of you is anxiety inducing from a natural survival standpoint, because you don't know if there's a wild animal ready to eat you, But I feel like in our modern society, we kind of screw ourselves up by teaching ourselves, like, the worst thing that can happen to a young child is failing at school.
Oh.
I mean, it's not the worst, but it's a very common experience for young kids.
It is, and it so shouldn't be.
Yeah, it's just teaching us to be afraid of being uncertain, being afraid to not know the answer to something, or being wrong about something, being unsure about something, and like being taught like universal truths. And if you're not agreeing with that, you're like an outcast, you know. When in reality, most things are not actually universally true.
No, I've yet to find almost anything that's referred to as a universal truth that is accounted for bias. You know, even just on a regular human, different culture level, different kinds of human cultures, just on that level alone versus, all kinds of other things. Most of those things that are considered universal truths they don't stand up. And, you can't examine that with people who believe those truths are actually universal. It's just that whole investment in perfection that it exists, and that it's some sort of attainable, and all these, problems that happen when you drop anyone in an environment where perfection is a standard that anyone could use for or against anything, rather than a spectrum of acceptable and, parameters of acceptance, which is, so much more close to the truth in, rather than universal truths and having any of those be a solid point.
Yeah, we often like to bring the example of the shape of the earth. And just a disclaimer, this is not we don't want to advocate for flat earth theory or anything, but just think about it. Is like it's so universally accepted, or seemingly universally accepted, that the earth is round or like ball shaped, which isn't actually true, because at best it is like kind of some kind of ellipsoid, so it's like kind of squished to, it's not a perfect ball or whatever.
Well, it is round, it is not a sphere.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for, a sphere. But it's not even an ellipsoid, because, we have mountains and craters and all kinds of weirdly...
And the surface experience.
Yes, exactly.
Of being on that planetoid, on this ball, is going to be so much more flat. It is a flat experience because of scope and scale. So it's like, yes, we can intellectually know that we are on a round ball, but I do have some empathy for people who have trouble with the cognitive dissonance between their lived experience, which is when I look around, the ground is flat, right? And when I move around the ground is flat. But then scientists and people who've been to space tell us that it's round. And, we can prove it and we know that it's true. But that doesn't tell our surface level self that experiences this every day the truth in a way that we can live it. It leaves that, again, uncertainty and cognitive dissonance between what we know is true and what we experience as true. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah. Hold that thought quickly, because I wanted to say that the thing is, we say it's an ellipsoid, but it's actually not. It's just a very coarse-grained model of what the Earth actually looks like, and it's very bumpy. It's very imperfect. It's what's true is the Earth is Earth-shaped. It's a very unique shape.
and it's moving.
Yes.
You know, like even the oceans aren't flat. There are bulbs on the ocean. There are high spots and low spots on the surface of the ocean. You know, it's just like, what? It's because it's all moving. Yeah, it's, oh yeah. It's not made of...
Yeah, so in the end, sorry?
Oh, I was going to say, it's not like it's a marble made out of glass or something with a smooth surface, which, of course, we could get into on the microscopic level. Even that surface isn't smooth. But that's exactly what we're talking about. It's like it all depends on scope and scale and whether or not if you calibrated that with the people you're trying to communicate with.
Mm. And the thing is, so we say it's round, it's a sphere or an ellipsoid, depending on the context. And that's useful. That's but it's a model. It's not the truth. It's not an universal truth. It's a model of reality. It's a model that is very useful, and you can ask almost any scientist, or at least every good scientist, that we make theories, we make models, and a good model doesn't need to copy reality, but it needs to be useful.
Right. It needs to represent enough of reality.
Yes, exactly. And as you were saying before, in our everyday life, what really does it matter what shape of the earth is? You know, why do I need to know that it's roughly an ellipsoid? You know, in what cases do I need to know that? I need to know that when I talk to you guys, for you it's early in the morning right now, for us it's later in the evening,
right?
Because we live on different sides of this planet. But that's all really that affects my personal everyday life.
Right.
Okay, if I were a pilot or if I would work on GPS systems or whatever, it would be very useful for me to have a rough idea what the earth is shaped. But for most humans in our everyday life, it just fucking doesn't matter.
No, the hill matters more than the curvature of the earth.
Yes.
You know, the energy it takes to walk or drive up the hill matters more in the moment than the curvature of the earth does. Yeah, exactly.
And if you look at the map, you know,
mm-hmm.
It's usually flat,
right?
Because it's just more convenient to display it on a flat surface, even though it's not really the truth, the true depiction. But now comes the thing that makes us so upset with the education system. It fucking doesn't matter, but
but it does matter. If you're this upset, it matters.
Yeah, we still ask 6-year-old children to learn the earth is round, the earth is spherical, and if you don't agree, if you get it wrong, you get punished for it. I don't know how it is these days in schools, but at least when we grow up in our time, you would get punished for not agreeing or not knowing the correct answer to questions that actually don't really matter that much. And that just frustrates us so much.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. It's a representation of an intellectual elitism that's kind of baked into the industrial way we think about schooling, rather than actual learning and actual function in a contextual kind of way, rather than in a rote kind of way. And I think that's just part of the model thing that you were talking about earlier. It's like they took a model of what education looks like based on the average-ish kind of way that people learn and the average-ish kinds of things that everyone should know. Meanwhile, no one exists in a vacuum without biases, both the people creating the materials that people learn from and the structures of the way that we're expected to teach. And, you know, no child is a monolith either. And they all have their invisible landscapes. They all, they are all from different planets, basically, when they start coming to school, because each family has its own culture. And it may or may not have all that much to do with or have similarities with the culture of family of other people in their classroom. And they'll come with their own little worldviews that might be half based in fantasy. We have no way of knowing. These are 6-year-olds, It's like, do you have a science fascinated older brother who was teaching you all this stuff and showing you telescopes and all this stuff versus you learned whatever from YouTube videos that you found on your own? It's like, and all of that is very new, right? When I was a kid, there was Sesame Street. That's pretty much it. Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers. And then, if you were lucky to go to preschool, you might have had a preschool teacher that taught you these things. But otherwise, it was like whether they had a vested interest in having you know those things before school, you may or may not have known anything before school. I don't know if that helps your point at all.
I think so. Depends. Audience, let us know. But yeah, this was just a rant about a bit like kind of setting the stage for what we actually want to talk about today. It's just our main point was that in general, on a society level, we are basically set up for being uncomfortable with uncertainty for whatever reason, but uncertainty comes with a very not natural, but like kind of taught, very early learned fear or discomfort with the state of being uncertain about things. Yeah, and that basically affects our everyday lives. And I think almost everybody, not just plurals, but all people have experiences with everyday uncertainties. Some more, some less, I guess. And I think here comes in a term we wanted to talk about is uncertainty tolerance. So how much can you tolerate being in a state of uncertainty, and in what context?
Right. And it's funny, I'd never really, until you brought this up, we had never really thought about uncertainty tolerance before. But because we've had a lot of mental health recovery work with journaling and talking to ourselves about distress tolerance, there's a lot, it's just a different kind of distress. So it's just a different context on some of the same tools and on some of the same thought processes that go on. But yeah, distress over uncertainty is a very big thing. It's like how much, it's like how much energy does it take you to deal with what we call the possibility space? Like the more certain, not even certain, the more clear like expectations can be, and the more contextual the relationship to the environment the expectations live in, the less distress I have over trying to figure out my needs and path through both the expectations and the environment that they live in. Which is a pretty complicated way of saying, if I know what's going on, I'm not worried about what's going on. But so often we don't know what's going on, because what feels like clear expectations to us is not, is so much more detail than anyone's going to feel it's necessary to give us. Like if we want to deal with if we want to minimize our distress at navigating a new environment, we actually will, do a scouting trip and go see the environment we're going to be in before we're expected to be there. Map out the drive ahead of time, or maybe go to the lobby ahead of time, depending on what we're trying to do, and go and talk to the receptionist there and ask what kind of, prepare myself, asking questions and meeting the environment before I have to in a more neutral way. It relieves the pressure, but I have to go to all that work in order to accommodate myself. And I know not everybody does. One, not everybody needs it. And two, not everybody goes to that work for themselves to avoid the discomfort of uncertainty. There we go. That's the word we were looking for.
Yeah, there's a kind of a balance to, do you say a balance to strike? or how do you say that?
A balance to strike.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
A balance to strike.
I wasn't sure.
the phrase is often balance to strike, but yeah. But it's also, a balance to have, find, maintain, obtain,
Yeah, because like on one hand, sure, you can relieve the discomfort from uncertainty. And when I say you, I don't mean you guys specifically,
right.
but general you, and including us, because we are very it depends who's fronting, but yeah, the general passive influence is always present, that we are very uncomfortable with uncertainty and do a lot of things either consciously or unconsciously to prepare and feel less uncertain about things. But the drawback is, it, as you said, it costs so much work, so much energy. And then the question sometimes we have, what's actually more comfortable, feeling like preparing for the uncertainty and feeling less discomfort, or trying to increase our tolerance and being more okay with an uncertain path and state of things,
Right. Oh yeah.
I think it depends a lot on the context, but yeah, there's always this kind of balance.
Oh yeah. And once you start asking that question more, like we did, and we're in the middle of that question for ourselves. It's like, where does the cost benefit analysis play out in our well-being, right? It's like, is it just better to throw myself into uncertainty and deal with the consequences of all of the anxiety and whatever feelings I'm going to have in this uncertain environment, or all the recovery time it's going to take from doing all the planning and all the extra effort it takes to deal with, to minimize the uncertainty, so we're better there. And the side effect of doing the jumping in and learning how to handle the uncertainty and the anxiety in real time is that the prep work is a limiting factor in outcomes. Like we have helped ourselves through self-advocacy and prep work and all of that out of help that we might have gotten from other people. Because some of the times when we weren't able to do the things that we normally would do to prepare, we either end up taking wrong turns, or, having to ask that same receptionist we would have seen the day before for help. And then because they know the environment, they're not experiencing anxiety being here. They just have to, witness ours. And this is a codependent problem that we are going to be healing from for our entire life, is we sometimes expect other people to be uncomfortable with us being uncomfortable near them. Does that make sense? It's like we feel like we are imposing upon other people by being anxious in front of them. And so for a lot of people, that's just not true. So that's a projection onto their reality that doesn't have to be there. And if we give them a chance, if we do that, if we do experience discomfort in front of people, and we do exhibit anxiety symptoms in front of people, there's the bigger chance. The uncertainty holds hope that we didn't know was there. And now that we've been trying it out in real life, we're discovering all of these places it can live that we didn't know it was before. Like, that receptionist might be super helpful, might know actually people that we can ask these questions to, or, have tools or whatever. They can be our guide into this strange environment. And now, instead of going it alone with, all of our tools in our backpack already, we have a guide now. We have a touchstone. We may even have a friendly acquaintance that we can call later and ask for more advice. We may have a relationship connection, very parasocial, professional, whatever. This isn't necessarily a friend, but like, there's a safe person who exists now in the world who would have just been like an NPC in my life before this. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, that's Kathy, the receptionist in A building. and if I ever need anything, I can at least ask her, and she will be friendly and kind to me. And that is a new safety point in my world that I would have denied myself by a preparation in the past, because I hadn't contemplated my distress tolerance for uncertainty until now. And it's just realizing how much taking care of myself without asking for help is a limiting factor in the kind of support in the world and the safety in the world I could feel. Was super healing, and it is really hard to do. Telling you what, changing that gears on that has been so hard to do. Oh my gosh. But it's rewarding. It's absolutely rewarding. It's also shining a light on stuff we've been through too. So it's like, oh my gosh, why did you think it would be so hard? Why did you think everyone was going to be so mean? Yeah, I don't know if I want to answer that question, right?
Yeah, just a side note, not sure if it goes into the podcast, but we had this experience somehow. Lately, we've been going to specific doctor's appointments for various reasons. But people have been so nice and caring and like really like in our eyes over dramatic,
Right.
But we were just not used to that because, well, we haven't been to a lot of doctors in our lives because I guess we are lucky to be somewhat healthy, at least during our 20s. And then the only experiences we had was as a child. And, well, we said we're somewhat healthy, but we had like certain health issues as a child. And I guess back then, our experience with doctors was just horrible. That in our head we were so trained that they are just mean people just out there to get you, I don't know. And now when we go to the doctor and they're like super nice and caring, it's like we can't handle it. It's like, what should I say? What should I do? How do I respond to that kindness?
Right. Oh yeah, I'm experiencing that with our coworkers at our new job. It's like they're so shocked. We do that to them too, by the way. It's like we are so cooperative and so focused on the work as teamwork rather than competitive whatever, that when we reframe conflict as, okay, we all as a team are experiencing this friction point or whatever, something is happening to the team, not so-and-so's doing this to me, not, all of that. And we've been helping coworkers kind of have that experience of like, oh, people can be really nice. And it's like, yes, this whole gang up to love thing that, we've been trying to do in our system, and then it's been bleeding out into the physical. Which is, very scary if you come from a codependent background. Got to say. Anyway.
All right. Is there anything more you wanted to add to that layer 2, let's say, the everyday life uncertainty?
I don't think so.
Should we dive deeper?
Well, us, it's like, oh, we're just waiting to dive deep, so.
Okay. Okay, then buckle up, audience. I don't know. So plurality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we feel it's synonymous with what the fuck.
Oh yeah, and then there's 2 more what the fucks looking at the what the fuck going, huh? What the fuck? And then someone else is like, well, yeah, I never thought about it like that before, but that is very confusing. Huh? It's just like the layers of confusion on each other, both resonating and ricocheting, and just, and this discovery.
Yeah, I feel like.
Mm-hmm? What do you feel like?
I feel like so we've have been through this discovery since over 3 years now. I think 3.5 years, I'm not sure. And by now we're quite, well, more or less comfortable with the everyday plural shit fuck going on. But I remember like the first weeks and months of discovering our system, and I think this is a very, 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 very common experience for many plurals going through discovery. It's literally mind blowing in a good and in a bad way. I think ultimately it's a good thing, but when you live through it right now, sometimes it feels like going nuts. Like,
yeah, and according to a lot of society, it is. You know, I mean, that's an outwardly reinforced thought pattern. Absolutely, quite frankly, according to many people, who we are is not allowed. You are not allowed to be who we are. Period. End of sentence. You are not allowed to be a plural system. Polyplural system? You have got to be kidding me. You have to be able to define yourself in a way that's going to make sense to me in a paragraph or less. Thank you very much. No, can't. What? Even if I wanted to, I couldn't. So I'm going to approximate some sort of mask for you that will appease you, that I will attempt to maintain to your standards, but I will fail. Period. End of sentence. I'm like, that is a failure. No matter how that plays out, because it's not for us, because it's not internally motivated, it's never going to work.
You're basically creating an ellipsoid that represents your system.
Yes, creating the model that we are allowed to be presentable by. Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, that's also a thing. Like when you try to explain plurality to singlets, for example, then there's so much expectation of.
Sorry, our eye roll was so heavy when you even started that phrase. I'm like, oh god, do we have to? Please continue. Sorry.
It's just there's this strong expectation of always knowing who's fronting, even having a singular fronter is like such a common expectation, when in reality it's usually a very special case for most plurals, if even possible, you know.
And it's often fresh plurals too, people who are just either currently going through discovery or have recently gone through discovery. Do they have, either that or they have a lot of amnesia, which is only, a segment of the plural experience. Yeah, just because that doesn't apply to us at all. And it, as far as we know, it never has, but, of course, I'm going to be proven wrong. Someone will say, yes, no, we used to be like that, and we're not like that anymore. And I'm like, okay, but I don't have any memory of being like that. So my experience of my life, and here's the cognitive dissonance, my experience of my life is different than probably the majority of my headmates. I'm going to have a different relationship to the memories of the body and the life. I'm even going to have different lore. I'm going to have a different backstory than the next one. And I'm not here by myself. I'm here with a team. But, the next team may not have any overlap with this one. But we may have enough of a collective life story, because we're all going in the same direction. We're all swimming in the same flow. But their experience is a little bit to the right or the left or up or down from mine. Theirs is a little bit more summer and I'm a little bit more fall or whatever it is. But my experience is mine, but I'm not a monolith in my system. And I'm not taught the tools I would need to discern where there is and is not true. And I don't have enough space to live a human life in real time and do all of the work it would take to actually sort that out. It's not feasible to even figure it out and live a human life in real time. Like if I was a nun, and all I had to do was contemplate and pray and write in journals all day, I could probably figure it out. Meanwhile, I have a full-time job. I have, I have bills to pay. I have places to be. I have a social life to try and have. I have a podcast to do with my friend,
A body to feed.
Yes. And a body to care for. I have this whole life I've got to live out here in the physical to maintain the vessel. I would have to be somebody else's pet, basically, in order to do the work that would, literally, someone else would have to feed me and care for me and take care of my enclosure for me in order to free my mind up to have enough time to do that kind of work. And it's just, I'm choosing to live a life and not give a crap about how anybody perceives me instead, to the best of my ability. And then we'll have a panic attack about every time we succeed in not giving a fuck for a minute, right?
Yeah, basically you try, you have the choice of, preparing for the uncertainty and reducing the uncertainty and the discomfort, or learning to live with uncertainty and feel more comfortable with it, right?
Right.
And I say either or, but it's not actually either or, but there are probably many more options and a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Well, and like we said in the notes getting ready for the episode, order is the illusion and chaos is the reality. Because it's like, no matter what we know and we prepare for and what context we give a thing, there's always more. There's always more. I'm trying to think of, exponentially. There's always exponentially more that we don't know about any situation, about anything at all, than there is that we do know, that we are able to, mentally articulate, not even put into words, but just, conceptualize conceptually in the brain. That is still just such a small piece of what is. And then when and then if we get even bigger, you think about human perception versus what physically is available within the molecule structure of our environment, right? It's like thinking about all those pictures of gas clouds, nebulas and stuff from space. It's like, yes, the computers and the instruments took those pictures, but if we had our eyes there, we could not see that. They translated data we got with receptors that we don't have into light imprints that we can perceive. It's like, honestly, sculptures might be better. 3D models that we can touch, where they're warm in certain places and cooler in certain places, as well as colors, would be so much more beneficial, I think, and represent reality a lot more. But that's like holodeck thinking. Of course, we love holodeck thinking. We love imagining more possibilities than we can physically obtain in the moment, which is because the more we realize we don't know, the more we are just swallowed by uncertainty. It's like, oh gosh, we're blind in so many more ways than we could ever see.
And speaking of possibilities and space,
yes,
we also have this in our notes, holding possibility space, and actually it's something that we think about a lot, ? It comes up every now and then, is how basically the universe is fundamentally uncertain, as far as we understand it. When you look at a very small scale, on not even molecular level, but atomic and subatomic levels, we have quantum physics effects, and to this day nobody really can understand it. We have some maths that kind of model what's happening,
right?
Keyword model it. It's not a universal truth, it's just a model that happens to work, but it's not true,
right?
It's not even efficient. And our understanding is okay, everything is built up on uncertainty, and our vision for a more, let's say, open-minded world is opening up ourselves to possibilities rather than truths.
Yeah,
we feel like truth is some kind of this super divine thing in human society, when actually, like, why not, instead of thinking like black and white, true, untrue, why not just say, okay, there's a large possibility that this is true and a small possibility that this is true, but both can still coexist. You can like attach certain probabilities to things, but hold space for coexistence of possibilities that might be mutually exclusive, but they don't have to be, or they depend on context or perspective, and yeah, I mean, it's it's like our everyday experience as plurals. We have to live with the fact that there are multiple perspectives coexisting at the same time, in the same body, in the same mind. And if you're not used to that, if you're used to being taught, okay, true, untrue, this and not that, then it's really hard to wrap your head around it. But I think the more you indulge in it, the more you allow it to happen, the easier it gets. And well, I say that right now because I think this is mostly Matt speaking right now, and I'm very comfortable with uncertainty. Right. But I'm saying that the more you do it, the easier it gets, the more comfortable we are. But that's not always true.
Well, you're right. It is. Because no headmate is a monolith. It's like, yes, there is a universal layer of you guys are all part of the same system, but completely different aspects of it. Possibly, I know you, Matt, you and Will both have overlap. A lot of overlap. You spend a lot of time together in the front. You spend time blended. So there's going to be a lot of overlap there. But it doesn't make it exclusive, And I'm sure there's tons of pockets of dissonance where Matt nature and Will nature do not align.
Yeah, certainly not. Otherwise, we wouldn't have discovered our individuality, right?
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's just the thing. It's like, if we can notice a difference, then it exists. And if the difference is who I am, then I exist, is the thing. It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah. It's like, okay, we need to quit fighting what is and accept what is, and define it later if necessary a lot of the time, because for us, change in the system and all that happens so quickly. Like, we learn a new thing, we blow our own mind for a second, and then boom, a whole new structure shifts within the headspace. We relate differently to one another, and we relate to ourselves and our system differently. And we have mind-blowing shifts, like, all the time. And, like, you guys have known this for a long time. It's like, don't we go through this almost weekly?
Yeah.
And we've discovered that basically that's discovering the flow and the shift and the wave that we live in. That's our home. And so us constantly, and it turns out when we think about it right now, we know that the parts that we get stuck on are the parts that we're holding on to for people on the outside that don't even necessarily make sense to us, which is why we didn't immediately adapt to that in context of this thing that happens on the outside. I don't have better words for that, but it's like, oh yeah, when it's hard for us to adjust, usually it's because we're trying to calibrate with someone who's not actively having a conversation with us. And, we're trying to hold possibility space for other, outside people's needs, rather than just our own headmates, just our own system, or even, in life, just our own family members. Like, our family adjusts pretty well to the changing tides and the seasons and all of that. But people on the outside who don't know us very well, there's... it's hard. It's very hard, because we know we experience negative side effects of how different we can be, even if we've told people on the outside that we're plural. It never manifests the way that they expect it to. And in general, no one has been brave enough to ask us questions about what's going on in order to conceptualize, context, put things into context for themselves so they would have a better grounding to relate to us from. We don't have that in life with anyone who either doesn't live with us or isn't also plural. It's just not reality for us. So when your self-concept lives in a blind spot of pretty much everyone else around you, it kind of sucks. But we find such a joy in accepting ourselves and to being ourselves, and just to shift back to the topic though, as we started talking about it and thinking about, like we said in the very beginning, that cognitive dissonance has a hand-to-hand, that holds hands with passive influence. Because the only reason passive influence exists is because there's more than one self experiencing something at the same time, which means they're not holding it from the same perspective, which means there's a cognitive dissonance layer in between them, which is what we're feeling. But we were still expecting that signal to be a unified one, rather than the results, the noise that happens when more than one sound is happening at the same time. And I don't know if I can make it make more sense than that right now. It's like we feel like we'd have to make art about that to even try to talk about it, because it's like, or it would take like an hour long of just here, this was happening and that's happening and blah. But anyway.
Well, if anyone listening feels discomfort with the uncertainty or unclarity of what you're trying to say, then this is a good practice to increase your tolerance to words.
Yeah. Because, it doesn't matter how articulate you are. Some concepts are just too big for human language. They're just too complicated. You have to drop them back into metaphor. You have to put them into models. You have to do that stuff because there's just so many details that are involved. It's like talking about history in the way that I was taught history, was mostly about when laws were passed and when wars and battles happened. For the most part, it's like, well, that doesn't really tell the whole story of what was happening to the people that were experiencing these things happening at the time, which is so much more what history really is. It's like, what was the cultural impact of that? Of what was happening, of what's happening now. The cultural impact is different in each variant of culture, and that's complicated. We have to use models to talk about that. We can't just let every person's individual story be the only story. You have to let the chorus of the stories blend together to just kind of become the imprint on the collective memory of what happened, right? This neighborhood was impacted when that change happened in these ways, and a majority of people were upset by this, is as clear as it usually gets. And some of us are like, oh, but the individual stories are so much more interesting, so much more fascinating. But we don't even have time to get to know our own story to the level of that detail. Why are we so invested in just holding space for all of that individuality? Because we love people individually. We just really, really do. And we know that all human beings are human-shaped. But beyond that, we don't know anything else about you until we experience you. Because it's like, sure, okay, you've made these choices. This is what your life kind of looks like. This is the outfit you chose today. I don't know if it's laundry day, if this is your sense of style, whether you have no sense of style. I don't know. All I know is I am
Maybe they were forced to.
Right! All of that. Are you in uniform? Who chose the uniform? Because it's fine if you picked a uniform for yourself and you like it. versus this is the uniform you have to wear because it's what's expected of you or how you meet standards in some way. I don't know, but yeah, all of that. These are things we don't know. And it's like how we talk about kind of that with, you know, it's so funny how we got into the deep layer and I'm bringing it right back to the physical. But it's like, I know how different my headmates are from one another. I mean, well, sometimes there's tons that I don't know well enough to know how different they are, but I am so used to not everyone in my head feeling or thinking like I do that I'm used to the dissonance that comes through. You know, we're just getting better at not just trying to match it, trying to just let it be and try to understand it better from our own perspective, because we're allowing ourselves to have our own perspective. And that's a trick, man. It's that whole limiting factor. I don't want to be a limiting factor in what's going on with them by acting like it's also going on with me. Just because I can feel it doesn't mean it's actually happening to me, which is mind-blowing, let me tell you. It's like, oh, one of my headmates is having a panic right now. So there's panic happening in the body, but it's not mine. Oh, gosh. And for us, that manifested very kind of awfully, because then we have a nervous system that is on the edge of fight or flight, right? But an affect that is completely calm and rational and articulate. So nobody believes us that we're panicking because the fronter's not panicking. They're holding the front solid so we can navigate what's gonna, you know, what's happening and take care of it so that maybe we can make it through whatever we're doing and the panic simultaneously. But then we can't get support or understanding for the panic because no one else's nervous system is, you know, we're not giving any signals that we're panicked. And we have the same problem when we're talking about pain because we can't function well and be articulate and all the things we need to do to navigate outside spaces while also experiencing the pain. So we separate it out. And then nobody believes we're in pain. And it's just...
Yeah, very relatable.
It's just like, oh... It's like, once I stop doing all this work for you, I'm going to be in agony. I actually am in agony. And it's taking a hell of a lot of energy to just be pleasant for you. Because I'm being pleasant for you. Me, if I was doing my own thing, I would be stomping and screaming right now. But I know that's inappropriate behavior for indoors around strangers. Just give me a break. But, you know, and it's like, at some point, when do we let it go? And when do we just, you know, someone in my head is like, when do we be naughty? When do we just let go and be naughty and not care what they think and not care about propriety and not care about how we're perceived, you know? And so we have someone cheering us on like that going on in there. Everyone is also like, I don't want to have to deal with what this will do to our reputation. Because, you know, the kids don't care about reputation. But I have to, because we need to be invited back to spaces. We need to not have non-compliance put in our medical record or in our work record or whatever, you know? It's like... And I don't want everyone in my system to have to understand all those things. I really love having the peace that that everyone who doesn't have to wear the chains of modern humanity, I wear them for them, you know? It's like... I want them to have the freedom so someone in my system can. Because I'm worried that I would, you know, I don't want my kids in chains, if that makes sense, you know? Mm-hmm. And so we don't put them on them. They might have tethers, you know, they're not allowed to go too far, but it's not the same thing. They hold on to it because they don't want to get lost. It's a service for them. It's not an obligation. And I don't know. I think that was kind of a rabbit trail, but
one thing you said when you were asking when, I'm not sure what exactly your words were, but like when do we act this way and when do we act that way? This is like kind of the drawback of holding space for possibilities, because once you have multiple options. There's this palace of choice, right?
Right.
That's something we often struggle with, is like, okay, how should we behave now? We can do this, and that, but what do we choose now?
Right.
And then it's usually just like kind of, okay, well, let's just go with the flow and see what happens. But it doesn't feel like we have much agency. It's just like, just drifting in the ocean in a way.
Right.
But I feel like this is just opening multiple more cans of worms, and we're looking at the time.
Right, yeah.
We can continue the conversation for the sake of the podcast. I would like to wrap this up a bit with maybe a few words to. I'm imagining maybe plurals listening right now, or people questioning if they're plural, and dealing with a lot of uncertainty right now.
Or watching someone go through discovery or whatever, that too. I think this would be really relatable to people who want to be better allies. Does that make sense?
Say that again.
I said, I think the other people that this would apply to is not necessarily people who are questioning, but people who don't know what to do because someone in their life is going through this.
Mm-hmm. Also that. Just circling it back to the very beginning, what we said about how we are trained to be uncomfortable with uncertainty. Maybe, hopefully, this encourages you, if you feel like this great discomfort with what's going on with all that uncertainty and whatnot. First of all, you're not alone.
No.
And it's totally okay to feel that way. And just remember, it's not going to be forever like that. And you can learn to be more comfortable with it. You've probably been taught to always be sure about yourself, always have a clear understanding of your identity and yourself and your life and all the things externally that are going on in parallel. But the reality is life is chaotic, and nobody actually expects us to know everything and always be sure. We humans love our models for some reason. We need that to, navigate our everyday life. But reality is there's no universal truth, and we're actually all just swimming in uncertainty all the fucking time. And it's totally okay to feel anxious about it. And we hope that with time you will feel more tolerant about it.
Sure, yeah. And that questioning that uncertainty, it's like if you dive into it and you explore it rather than just let it lead, it's like, okay, we like to let whoever's uncertain in our head space just be uncertain, but all the rest of us don't have to be uncertain just because they're uncertain, and we can all bring what certainty we have and what uncertainty we have to the table, and just kind of together build a conceptual model of what's going on, because the only reason it's coming up is because there's distress, right? Otherwise we would already have moved on. We'd only notice things when there's a hiccup. Generally, sometimes it's a good hiccup and sometimes it's an uncomfortable hiccup, but examining those when you have the time and space, and just being gentle with whoever's around, and leaning into working together, I guess, is just, I know that gets cliche in plural spaces to be like, well, you got to work together. It's like, well, for us, it's more about not accepting the most distressed person's version of the situation as the default, rather than just one of the perspectives that's available. It's very valid for them. It may not be valid for everyone else. And in general, we've just stepped back and let the people who are most distressed have their distress because they have the biggest need in the moment, right? But maybe supporting them best doesn't look like that. Maybe it looks like us all being equal at the same time as, for, certain levels of equality and blah, 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 blah. When we're polyfragmented, it gets really complicated really fast. But in general, just working to bring that to more of an even footing, to letting them have all their feelings, but not letting their feelings be the only feelings that we have, because that really doesn't represent the truth of the situation. It's like we were talking about with the panic example. It's like, not all of us are panicking, but the ones who are panicking are incredibly distressed right now. And it, as confusing as it is to people on the outside, it is so much more comforting to us on the inside. We are willing to have a confusing affect to people on the outside in order to be accommodating to ourselves on the inside. And, that is a choice we make for reasons, but the more we hold space for each other and our feelings without sacrificing ourselves, we're not pushing down our own feelings in order to leave space for other people's big feelings, if that makes sense. The more we do that, the more the panic or distress isn't a limiting factor on what other people are feeling, and the more tools we have, the more navigation we have, because it doesn't narrow all the richness of feeling we're experiencing simultaneously to the one most powerful feeling. If we let ourselves have all of those feelings simultaneously, then we have this cornucopia, this whole painting of experience and context for what's happening right now, rather than just the pinpoint of the most acute experience in the moment, if that makes sense. So we don't limit it down to one signal. We let this scope and scale broaden out and give ourselves a broader context, because we have a broader context for our experience. It's not just this one thing happening. I was triggered and now I'm panicking. No. Some of us are triggered and panicking now, and the rest of us are feeling that panic and navigating the situation alongside the panicking ones. And together, we are going to get the whole system through whatever this is. And, outsiders be damned. It's not about them. It's about us. And the more we do that, sometimes we bump up against problems we cause for ourselves because nobody believes us. But on some level, that's their problem too. They should be more understanding and not be affect policing. It's like, I shouldn't have to perform pain for you to believe I'm in pain, or perform panic for you to believe that I'm experiencing panic symptoms or producing adrenaline right now. It's like, there's just that. Just give yourself the space to have, our encouragement is, and like, I don't want to tell anybody what to do, but it's like what we've really grown from and are practicing for ourselves is not letting any one aspect of our current experience monopolize the front and become the whole of the experience, because it's not representational of our actual truth. Where our conceptualized, our contextualized, there we go, contextualized reality of what we're experiencing right now in our embodied moment, if I need to be as wordy as possible.
Also, something you said is that some may be more certain than others. Just reminded me that some systems, especially early in discovery, there's often the experience that certain system members are in denial about their plurality while others are not. And there's again, this dissonance between system members potentially. And that's also something that I guess creates a lot of discomfort. But it's also something that requires a lot of patience, a lot of the cliche work together, work towards a common goal. But yeah, first and foremost, patience, a lot of patience and tolerance.
Yeah, which takes practice. We don't have to be like the structures that taught us how to be, like that perfectionism. Like, oh, no, you're going to do it wrong quite a few times before you figure out what works. You know, and I think of that as like the friction of putting on the brakes. If you're trying to change direction, if you're trying to change how you do things from the default setting of how you learn to do things, it's going to feel wrong at first. It's going to be distressful at first. It may even be panic inducing the first few times you try, but the feedback you get from what did work and what didn't work lets you fine tune it and, you know, make it yours. And yeah, I don't know if that made sense, but it's like this idea that you're going to do it right the first time. Oh, you're going to have to trash that as soon as possible. And then as you grow, that those needs will change also. It's like every time you succeed, you change the landscape, and then it's going to be different next time. Maybe not by a lot, but if you succeed, it will be different. And then it's just like, oh my God, the growth never stops. Unfortunately, yeah, the growth never stops. But that's how we experience the joy of uncertainty. Is that true? The growth never stops.
Now we have totally confused our audience.
Oh, well.
Thrown you into the pool of confusion and uncertainty.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, we will leave you with that feeling. See how well. See it as a practice. See with it, swim with it, see how it feels.
And if you want to, let us know.
And if it's actually maybe less uncomfortable as it maybe seems at first.
Absolutely. But this is Housemates for Life podcast. And we are the unfiltered universe.
And we are the voices of Jarvis.
We thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for listening, and thank you for your support. Like this episode if you enjoyed it, if it helped you. Share it if you think somebody needs to hear it.
All of that.
Goodbye.
Goodbye for now. Take care.